Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You will notice I've started putting a few messages into the chat box that you should see popping up on your screen at the moment. Please, by all means, use that chat box to introduce yourselves throughout today's session. I'm Zoe. I'm part of the team at Crowdfunder, and today we're going to be looking at how to successfully crowdfund for your sports organisation or your sports club. We have been joined as well by the wonderful Andrew from Sport England, who's going to be talking through their exciting new match funding opportunity in partnership with ourselves. We've also been joined by Martin from Row Green Tennis Club, and he's going to share his experience of crowdfunding successfully, some advice and some tips for all of you here today who might be thinking about taking part in crowdfunding to raise money for your project and for your sports organisation. Now, I did have a wonderful poll that I'd actually created for you so we could get a real idea of what brings you here today. Unfortunately, it being a live session and Zoom being a little bit awkward sometimes has meant that I'm unable to publish that one for you at the moment. I will do my best to publish that throughout today's session. But what I really want to know is what brings you here today? Are you looking to find out more about crowdfunding? Have you maybe applied for the movement fund through Sport England and you need to know more about how to crowdfund for your project? Do you have a live crowdfunding project or even one in draft mode and are looking to find out more? So please do put something in the chat box so we can really get an understanding of who we have in the live room today so we can best tailor this session to your needs. Before we get started properly, of course, let's make sure we do a little bit of housekeeping. So we have allowed 60 minutes for this session. That does include a Q&A at the end with our panelists. So please do use that chat box to pop any questions that you might have throughout the session, and we will do our best to cover those off as we go, and we will leave time to scoop up any of those questions at the end as well. As I mentioned, this is a live session. However, we are recording it. So we will make sure that we send a follow-up email with all of the resources that we talk through, links to those, and the recording as well for you to watch back in your own time and share with your committee members, other people in your organisation as well, to help them get on the same page as yourselves with crowdfunding. If you do find that you have any issues with your internet connection, the best thing to do is just to exit the live room and then follow your registration confirmation email to make sure you can jump straight back in. You might find you lose the chat. That's absolutely fine. Just let us know in the chat box and we can get you back up to speed. Now, I will also be sharing some resources with you, so links to certain parts of our website for you to take a look at. You will find those in the resources tab, which is along the bottom of your screen in your toolbar, and I'll make those available as we go throughout the session. I will make sure we include those in that follow-up email too, so don't worry too much if you miss them in this session. You'll be able to access them when you receive that email. Now, if you are finding that myself and the panelists are actually covering information on the slide, do just head up to the view option, which should be in the top right corner of your screen, and select side-by-side speaker view, and that should remove myself and anybody else's faces from the slides so you can see the content in its entirety. Okay, let's get started. So for some of you here today, who might not have an understanding of crowdfunding, it might be completely new to them. Ultimately, it's a way of raising money digitally from the crowd of people around you. So that, in your instance, is going to be existing members and committee members, fellow volunteers, also thinking about that wider community too. So when we refer to your crowd, we're thinking about the network of people you have around you, friends, family, colleagues, community members. Rewards-based crowdfunding is essentially offering a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. And that can take many forms. Specifically when we're thinking about sports clubs, that might be things like a discounted membership, for example. It could be merchandise that the club creates for their members. It could also be products and services that you've sourced from the business community around you. And we'll spend a little bit more time going over rewards later in the session. And Martin from Row Green Tennis Club had some brilliant rewards and actually showcased them really well on his page. So we'll speak to him about that as well. Essentially, it's something, a thank you, if you like, for your community's support, giving them something back to say thank you so much for getting behind us and actually donating to our page. Now, of course, the primary need for something like crowdfunding is going to be to raise the money that you need to make your project happen. And that might be club redevelopment, it might be running more sessions, it could even be things like supporting lower income families to get into the sport that you're actually delivering. One thing that people might not have considered when entering into this, is the additional benefits that come along with crowdfunding. First and foremost, it's a great way to build some validation in what you're doing. It will help you to build confidence in your own idea. And it's a really low risk and low cost way of seeing if there is an appetite for what you're trying to achieve. Crowdfunding really shouldn't come at a huge kind of financial cost to you. It's a brilliant way to showcase who you are as a club, why you're hoping to achieve what you want to with the money raised, and really highlight that great community impact that you're already achieving and hope to continue to do so. That will automatically help yourselves as committee members and members of the club to build that confidence, because you'll start getting feedback from people around you to see if what you're doing is actually really a worthy cause within your community. And chances are it will be, because we all know that sports clubs and sports organisations can be a real linchpin and really pivotal in their local communities as well. That leads to some wonderful awareness around you as a club or an organisation and what you're doing. So quite often people might not understand or even have any insight into what you actually do day to day in your club, especially if they're not engaged with you as a member or are taking part in the sport that you practice. So it's a brilliant way to showcase who you are, as I mentioned, create that buzz around your idea and actually get people excited to see it coming to life when you've raised the money that you need. It can help you as well to get noticed by a wider audience, and we give you the tools and the resources in order to do that effectively. It's very easy to rely upon those that are already kind of invested in what you're doing by, club members, that committee that I mentioned, and those organizations that you already have a connection with. And we call that almost looking internally to raise money in traditional fundraising strategies. What we're asking you to do is really open up and look outside of your club, look to that wider community to bring in those donations. And that can lead to some really lovely, meaningful connections going forward. That could be club sponsorship from local businesses. It could be in-kind offers of building materials, or we've had things like, ex-display kitchens that have been donated by the local kind of trade shop when people have been rejuvenating and redeveloping their clubhouse, for example. So it's a great way to put yourselves out there, get noticed by that audience, start those conversations about who you are and what you're doing, and build upon that, develop those collaborative relationships within your community going forward. And that will lead to that lovely engaged audience as well. Now, what we find is whenever anybody donates to a crowdfunding campaign, they generally will become an advocate for that project. They'll start talking to their friends and their family about the wonderful thing that they've just donated to, and that can help build that audience too. Having organic advocacy for what you're doing, so that word of mouth promotion, is really important. So it's a great way to do that and actually build up that awareness of your club within that community around you. We have loads of support on offer, which is going to help teach you and cement those new skills. For some of you, that could be things you're not quite used to doing. So, championing yourselves online, that can be quite overwhelming. You might not have a huge social media following, for example. We can help you and kind of teach you the skills you need to build that up. Things like networking in person and online. Things like even just writing engaging copy about who you are and what you're doing. It's not things that you necessarily do day to day, but can be really beneficial for the club overall going forward. Once you've really kind of practiced this and nailed it, you can integrate it into the way in which you fundraise in the future. And of course, for the majority of you on the call today, you will be wondering about the match funding opportunity. We work with regional and national partners across the UK to deliver and distribute match funding to eligible projects, and that's across the board. Today, we're going to be looking at sports Specifically, that's why Andrew from Sport England is here to talk us through their new movement fund. One thing I would like to highlight is if your project fits within the eligibility criteria for our other funding partners as well, you can apply for more than one match fund. So it can be a really exciting way to boost the money that you're raising. So definitely have a little check when you're setting up your crowdfunding account and entering your details for us. Just check who you've been matched with and apply for everything that you have been matched with that you think would be a good fit. Now, when we talk about crowdfunding, there are a few things that we know you absolutely need to have a successful crowdfunding campaign. One of which is, of course, that crowd. You need to have that group of people that you have as a certainty that you can reach out to and bring in some donations and some pledges. And as sports clubs and organisations, you have that already. You have your membership, you have your committee, you have those schools and colleges that you already have conversations with. You might have team members attending. You have those community organisations that may well use your facilities. So you have a really wide or potentially wide crowd at your fingertips already, which is a really good recipe for success. The other thing that you have, which sets you apart from the majority of our other projects, is you have this inert passion and drive to be successful. Some might call it a competitive edge, especially for those of you that are practicing competitive sports. You know, it comes naturally to you to kind of really put everything behind this and push towards reaching those targets. So utilize that. Get a team of people around you, bring in different members of your organization, utilize people's skill sets as well. The best way to do this is as a team. So if you do practice team sports, especially, make sure you're encouraging those around you to get involved with this fundraising effort. You will see that it yields better results if you can do this collaboratively as a group of people within your organization, or even with friends and family that have that vested interest as well. Just some numbers before we move on to talk to Martin from Row Green. Just to make you aware, we have been doing this for a little while now. Crowdfunder UK is in its 11th year. We have seen so many different projects come through the platform over those years. Specifically, when thinking about our partnership with our sports extra funding partners in recent years, these are some of the numbers that have been generated. So we've had over 4,000 projects raising for their sports clubs. We've seen more than £8.4 million be distributed to those sports clubs by way of extra funding. And that is just looking at our sporting partners. So some of those clubs could well have received match funding from their local authorities on top of that, for example, or any of our other partners that we work with. Over 3,000 individuals have supported those projects collectively, and they have raised more than £26 million for their clubs and organisations. And that's everything from grassroots sports all the way through to those kind of familiar names that you may well recognise in the sporting community. So huge potential, huge impact. And the one thing I will say is take a look at some of those projects on our platform for some inspiration. Have a look, see what's come before you, see what's been achieved in terms of targets and the types of things people are raising money for. And if that resonates with your idea, you can kind of replicate that, take inspiration and work with what's already come before you and has been successful. As somebody who has managed to have a really successful campaign recently, raised a whopping 31,500 pounds from almost 150 supporters within his community and received extra funding from Sport England towards that, is Martin from Row Green Tennis Club. Hi, Martin, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day to share your experience as well. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about your project? I will share the link to your project in the resources tab for people to take a look at, but would you mind walking us through your project and what was the need for the fundraise?
So we have a very small tennis club in the Greater Manchester region with 3 outdoor courts. We were quite successful last year raising money the traditional way to get our courts refurbished. But we then identified a few more needs that we really wanted to address to keep our courts nice and safe and maintained. the future. And for that, we then turned to a crowdfunding campaign, applied for match funding with Sports England, and we're lucky, as you said, there's other funding bodies out there. Our local council were happy to come in and match fund as well. So in the end, we almost tripled the money that we raised, or more than tripled the money we raised through match funding efforts. For us, that was obviously great, and we have gone on to buy new maintenance equipment. We've gone and ordered new fencing to be erected after the season. So really successful towards keeping the club at the center of our sporting community here.
Sorry, thank you. That's really good to hear. And in terms of raising money this way, I know for lots of clubs, they're used to maybe grant applications or bid writing. Did you find this more daunting, or did you like the idea of this being kind of supporter facing, where you could really put that story out there to your community and involve them in this process? How would you compare the two?
It's very different. For one, for us, it obviously allows us to get more buy-in into the project at the club. You've got more stakeholders in it as well with that. If you do traditional fundraising, it's a very one-to-one situation with the grant awarding body, and all the members in the club, all the stakeholders in the club, the community is not really involved with it. Whereas with the crowdfunding campaign, we found that reaching out into the community, getting the interest in the club, getting the club publicized a lot more, keeping it in the forefront of everyone's mind really during the campaign phase, did help us quite a lot in terms of publicity, and yeah, just getting people down to the club, having a look as well.
That's really good to hear. So I mentioned those benefits kind of at the beginning of the session. Do you think you as a club have noticed those as part of this process? Maybe some increased awareness, as you mentioned, people coming down and actually taking a look at the club that might not have been there before. Did you see any other of those benefits?
Well, I think for us, the main thing was that we are very hidden away. People know that there are tennis courts, but we're kind of a little bit hidden away, faceless. And this kind of helps us to become a little bit more engaged with everyone. It forced us to be a bit more engaged as well. As a small club, you tend to be fairly hidden away unless you have a very outgoing committee that wants to send the message all the time. And for us, it was a good exercise to kind of use our social media channels a bit more, and yeah, just go out into the community and try to drum up some support for the club.
What I absolutely love, Martin, is you're one of the kind of few projects who really went to town with their rewards offering. So not only did you have a really lovely selection, but you actually featured them on your page as well. And I know you did a lot of work to kind of promote those as part of the campaign. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about that process and how you did that effectively?
So we had an initial discussion with Sports England. Might be quite interesting as well, about the match funding and the requirements for the project. And one of the things we were asked to look at from our initial draft campaign was to see whether we can get more community involvement into it in the form of rewards, which kind of shows that our community is really keen to help. And we then went out with a small number of people from our committee who are quite well established within the community, and who went out and spoke to local businesses, spoke to other organizations around us, all within really maybe a 3 or 4 mile radius around us, really local. And we're introducing our crowdfunding campaign to them, and we're asking for anything that could be given as a little reward for someone who donates towards this campaign. And it was really encouraging how many local businesses were happy to step in and provide, from small little baked muffins to really big prizes where people get a month's membership to a very, very large gym and tennis center here in the area. So everyone pulled together and really helped out. And in terms of them publicizing it, I think that you alluded to that. We had a section on our crowdfunder campaign that was looking at representing who was giving rewards to support us. And we had links directly to their websites from our crowdfunder website. And on top of that, during our campaign, we had a very limited time commitment. I think 30 days we set our campaign to. During those 30 days, we featured each of our reward givers on our social media channels for a day. They were pinned to our channel for a day, thanking them for their support, and kind of just, again, linking their social media profiles and their websites onto our Facebook and Twitter pages.
That's the bit that I really love, and it really helps to just kind of solidify what I was saying about that collaboration. And when it comes to rewards, having that mutually beneficial approach. So you've gone out and you've kind of sourced these things from your business community. However, you're actually also offering almost a really lovely publicity opportunity with yourselves and a promotional opportunity to kind of say, we're going to really focus for a day on the fact that you've done this really wonderful thing to help us. And that's going to help to broaden their customer base. And obviously that's going to encourage them to shout about your crowdfunding campaign to their customer base. And all of a sudden you are organically growing this wider network in your community. And I think you did that so well, Martin. It's a really great demonstration of exactly what we talk about. In terms of your overall experience, is there anything that you think, yep, that was an absolute win, or if we did this again, we do that little bit differently? Have you got any advice for those on the call today that they might be able to take that way and cement it into their experience?
I think go and speak to anyone you want to find match funding from is one of the things. For us, it was really good to have a chat with Sports England beforehand and kind of get an idea. And then we gave them access to our draft campaign so they could have a look. And from that first look, we had a couple of recommendations, which we then went back and fixed within our campaign. And I think that was really worthwhile doing. In terms of ease of use, I think it is really straightforward with Crowdfunder to get the setup. There's a lot of knowledge within the platform that you can access, which is helpful. Obviously, there were a few little bugbears. We've spoken about it before. That kind of surprised us, and then, but it happens, and I think we just worked through them. And overall, it was a very, very easy campaign for us to run.
Thank you so much. And I love the fact, as you mentioned, it was a really short campaign. So within 30 days, you're raising just over £30,000. So that's the nice thing, I think, to make people aware of as well with something like a crowdfunding campaign is you do receive the money that you raise relatively quickly after the close of your campaign. So within just over a month, you would have started fundraising and actually then received your payout. Where are you in terms of being able to implement that raised money towards your kind of project goals? Has it meant that you're able to push on with that quite quickly, or is it still part of a bigger overall picture?
So the first things have already been purchased. So as I said, the maintenance equipment is already on site. Some of the sports and activity equipment is already there. For us, the big expense on this campaign was the renewal of all the fencing. And obviously during the peak season, this is something we can't really start. The fencing is on order, all the new gates are ordered, and the security measures are ordered. So hopefully at the end of the season, September, October time, we're then ready to get the contractors in and get all of this sorted. I think in terms of payout, maybe something that needs to be just quickly addressed is this wallet that you need to establish. And for this wallet, you will need to make sure that you can have all the verification documents ready to put on. So I would suggest as soon as you get a pledge from Sports England or from any other of the match funding bodies, this function will become available on your account to open your wallet and get that sorted. Because I've had the advice early on that some clubs kind of fell into that hole, that their verification wasn't done really early on, and they then had to wait for the verification to go through to receive all this money. For us, we had it luckily set up really early on, and the money came out within, I think, about 6 days of finishing the campaign. We had the money directly from our donors come into our bank account, and the match funding from Sports England and the council here was the same day, I think, or the day later.
Amazing. That's really good advice. And that's something that is a really good takeaway, actually, is there is a little bit more due diligence in terms of receiving that match funding. So making sure, as you mentioned, once prompted to set up that wallet, you just kind of crack on and get all of the relevant documentation uploaded so it can be verified well in advance of the close of your campaign. And then, you know, as soon as you close, all of that payout process is going to be kicked into action. Thank you so much, Martin. Would you mind hanging around in the wings until the Q&A session at the end? Because I'm sure there'll be some questions coming in for you about your brilliant campaign. Thank you
No
so
problem.
much.
I'll be around.
Brilliant. Thank you. We will
Thank
talk
you.
to you shortly. Okay, so we've touched a lot upon match funding during this session, and we've got a really exciting new partnership. It's kind of an existing partnership that's been revamped with a new fund with Sport England. And to talk us through that match funding opportunity is Andrew Spears. Hi, Andrew. How are you today?
I'm very good, Zoe. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this call to walk us through the Movement Fund. Would you be happy to take the reins and talk us through that?
Absolutely, yeah. So hi, everyone. So as Zoe said, I'm Andrew Spears. I'm part of the team at Sports England, and it's lovely to be able to join today's session to share with you some information about the Movement Fund. And I would just say at the outset, I think these webinars are absolutely fantastic, and I encourage you to make the most of the time that you have with the experts from Crowdfunder, but also successful crowdfunding projects like the one Martin's just talked about. I think listening to all the great advice they can share, and obviously asking any questions you have. I'll be around later in the session alongside Zoe and Martin to try and answer any specific questions you have around the Movement Fund. But the Movement Fund itself is a new funding service that Sporting have launched. We launched it back at the end of April 2024. And as Zoe said, it follows on from a programme we've had historically called Active Together, which I think is the one that Martin applied to and was successful with. The Movement Fund offers crowdfunding pledges, grants, and also a range of other resources to enhance physical activity opportunities for individuals and communities, particularly those in need. And there is considerably more detailed guidance on the Sporting England website, but just to give you a sense, the Movement Fund is able to support not-for-profit community organisations with a range of costs and items that'll help deliver positive change within the community. We're able to support projects that promote physical activity that includes active travel, walking, cycling, dance, fitness, and obviously sports activities themselves. We would love to be able to fund every project that comes forward to us, and certainly all those that meet our aims, but we do receive more applications than we can fund. So we do have to have a mechanism for prioritising projects and making clear to organisations the things that we're particularly looking forward in the projects that we want to support. And of particular interest to us are projects that provide opportunities for groups that face particular barriers to activity. So for us, that involves people who live on low incomes, disabled people and those living with long-term health conditions, older people, and by older we mean people aged 65 years and over, people from some culturally diverse communities, women and girls, and particularly pregnant women and parents of very young children, LGBTQ plus people and communities, people who are in the care system or in foster care or have been through the care system, people who are unpaid carers or have unpaid caring responsibility, and people who live in communities where there is what we would regard as greater need. So there are areas of deprivation materially, or they have worse health outcomes in that particular place. Or sometimes we find perhaps those communities are more isolated and don't have quite the same infrastructure or networks that other places do. And the Movement Fund can offer investment of up to £15,000. And so one of the investment options is crowdfunding. So Zoe's already talked about this, but I just really wanted to come back to the point that crowdfunding obviously is slightly different to traditional grant funding. It does require that bit of additional work to successfully run a campaign, but it, as Martin outlined beautifully, it has many benefits that make all that extra work well worth it. So as well as what the organisations can achieve financially, the organisations that tend to run these campaigns can see increased numbers of membership, sponsorship from local business, a greater sense of place within their community or identity within their community, and the ability to develop new skills like social media, marketing and communications. So I think even if after hearing about the Movement Fund you decide it's not necessarily the right thing for you, I would still encourage you to think about it as a really good option and opportunity to generate additional funds for your organisation or project. And to help you with that, and I'm sure Zoe will perhaps talk a bit more about this later, Sport England and Crowdfunder have a range of support and resources that can enable you to create a successful campaign, whoever you are. So please do take advantage of those. One of the things I think is useful to say is that organisations and projects will come to the Movement Fund crowdfunding from various different routes, and I suspect several of those are represented today. Many will start on the Sport England website, which contains all the information and guidance you need to apply. And as I said earlier, the Movement Fund is a wider funding programme that offers both grants and crowdfunding investment. When you apply through the Sport England website, we will consider your application and match it to what we think is the best investment option for you. And for those we offer a pledge to, we'll then direct them to the crowdfunder site to access the support they need and to start to develop their campaign idea and page. However, some will discover the Movement Fund from the crowdfunder website itself. And what we'd ask there is those who have not registered or started their campaign should go to the Sport England website. And on the screen we have in place here, that's clicking on the blue button there, which will take you through to the Sport England website, where you'll follow the process that I just described a few moments ago. But for those of you who have already started a campaign, you should click on the red button on this screen that's on the screen, and that'll take you through the extra funding process and unlock some of those other funding opportunities that Zoe talked about earlier, and I think is now going to describe in a little bit more detail. So over to you, Zoe.
Thank you, Andrew. And it's really exciting to be rolling out this Movement Fund through Crowdfunder as well. And as you mentioned, it is that wider opportunity. So definitely people take a look at the website. If they're not already crowdfunding, head over to Sport England. And also if you have got a project in draft mode, or if you are thinking about maybe having this as part of a wider match funding opportunity for you to see who you might have been matched with alongside Sport England, you might want to take that route of going straight through Crowdfunder. So whatever works for you. I have shared a link into the resources tab just to make everyone aware. It's under the links section in the resources tab to the Movement Fund, which has the full eligibility criteria and all of the T's and C's that you might want to take a look at just to see if you do fit that eligibility. I will also share with you now our wider extra funding offer, so you can see whereabouts you are in the country and what might be a funding opportunity for you as well. Okay, so Andrew talked you through the process of applying through the Sport England website, which is amazing. If you are applying through Crowdfunder, so as I mentioned, you might have a temp project or a draft project set up already. You could even have a live project and you're currently fundraising on our website, or even if you're just thinking about starting the mechanics of setting up your account with us, which is a free account to set up, and just testing the water to see what's available to you. You can do this and we will support you to do this. We'll walk you through the process. ultimately our amazing computer program, our website software, based on a few key bits of information that you give us when setting up your account for your project, will match you with any of our available match funding partners that we think, or the system thinks, would be a good fit for you. And that's based on a few pieces of information. Firstly, make sure you put in your postcode of your club or your organization and where you're delivering your project. That will help us to geographically match you with our funding partners. The other thing you're going to do is complete some basic information. You'll also have a whole kind of tick box exercise as part of the extra funding section within the setup of that project and that account. Within this, please do tick the box to allow us to share your information with our partners. And that information is going to be that basic information you input for us. So where you are, what your club structure is. Are you a for-profit organisation? Are you a charity? Are you a CASC? Are you a CIC? We need to know that information to make sure we match you with our relevant funds, dependent on the eligibility criteria for organisations. Then the best thing to do is actually make sure you take a look at the project aims and outcomes section. So who is going to benefit from your project? Who are you going to be working with? There will also be a tick box exercise around your project aims. So no doubt what we're going to see there is you ticking the box which says you are hoping to increase physical fitness. You might also tick the box that improves mental well-being or tackles isolation and vulnerability. There are all sorts of things that taking part in sport and being active can have as a byproduct and an effect on an individual and on the community at large. So do make sure you tick everything that is relevant to your particular project aims, and we can make sure that we match you with all of our extra funding partners that could well be interested in supporting you with a pledge. Now, once you have submitted those applications, and the way that you would do that is through your project dashboard. Your project dashboard is incredible, and you can manage every single aspect of your page and your project through this. There is a whole section on extra funding where you will see everybody that you have been matched with. If you are choosing this route for the movement fund, you will see it appear as a matched partner, and all you would need to do is click apply. You would then be prompted to complete the short application form, which will then be sent to Sport England, and they will look at your application as well as potentially your project page to get a really good overview of who you are and what you're doing. Once you have received approval for any match funding, that's the time that you're going to go live and start bringing in those donations. Specifically, let's look at that in terms of the movement fund. So let's go on the basis that you've been approved for the movement fund and you are ready to go live with your project. You're happy with how your page looks. It's very engaging. You've got some great images on there. You really tell your story clearly about who you are and what you're doing. You're going to set a go live date. And in the meantime, as you're waiting for that date to come around, you're going to start having conversations with people about bringing in those donations, making sure that as soon as you go live, you've got some promised pledges being made to your page. That's going to help you build momentum. No one wants to be the first person to donate to a crowdfunder or any fundraising activity. So make sure you've already had conversations with people and you've got some donations and pledges lined up for the day that you go live with your project. What you really want to aim for is knowing where 25% of your target is going to come from, ideally. The reason I say this is one of the milestones, if you like, attached to this match funding is that you will need to raise 25% of your initial target, and your target is something that you set. You're in control of that with your project. You determine what your target raise is going to be, but you need to raise 25% of that from a required amount of supporters, and you can see the supporter numbers you'd need to achieve in the table on the screen here, and that's dependent on your target amount. Once you've reached that milestone, so you've hit both of those things, you will see the pledge from the movement fund land on your crowdfunding campaign. all of a sudden, the money you've raised towards your target shoots up by that pledge amount. You'll see a lovely banner appear on your page to let you know that the Movement Fund and Sport England has supported you. And now what you need to do is use that as motivation to go back to your crowd, start re-engaging and promoting your campaign further, to keep bringing in donations and pledges until you reach 100% of your target. Once you've reached that 100%, everything that you've raised so far is completely secure. You've secured your pledge, you've secured all the money that you've raised from your crowd. Essentially, you have a successful campaign, and that's really exciting. You shout about it, tell everybody you've done it. If you have some time left live on your campaign, what you might decide to do, and we encourage you to do this, is to have an additional goal in mind, something we call a stretch target. And that money can be used towards those additional things that just really enhance your project. It might be things like, developing a stronger kind of marketing budget, so you can actually really shout about this new development that you're doing. You could be thinking about, if it's club club enhancement and redevelopment, maybe you're starting with one phase of that project, and actually then the stretch target is going to enable you to start working on another phase of the overall kind of larger project. So do think about having almost those two targets in mind. What's the minimum you need to make this happen and to really get this off the ground? And then what else could be added to a potential stretch target just to really make this project sing? And as Martin mentioned there, at the close of your campaign, you would normally see the money raised from your crowd land in your nominated bank account within around 7 working days. And then dependent on whether you've had that extra funding wallet verified, and as Martin advised you there, get that done early on in the campaign. As soon as that's verified, you would also have that payout from Sport England actioned. That will land straight in your bank account from Sport England. And you will see any other match funding that you might have been approved for land in your bank account shortly after your crowd money too. Okay, we've talked about the importance of this page and how it's a really good way to connect and engage with your community. Because we know what works well, as a sports club or a sports organisation, you will have access to our pre-formatted template. So all you need to do is follow the format of this template and insert the relevant information in the relevant places, and you will have what we would call a perfect project page. Really engaging, really highly visual, showcasing a lot of that community impact, showcasing the importance of the beneficiaries or the importance of those members and the way in which they engage with not only the sport but the club. So showcase people, have lots of pictures of people and individuals. Wherever you can, try and avoid really kind of overproduced, if you like, over kind of shiny drone footage, all those things that you might work better at almost like a pitch and like a website type design. You really want to be thinking about who's involved in this project, who are the people that use the club, what are those organizations that you help to support or that use your facilities. Think about the personalities that you have within your club as well. Get people behind the camera if you can to make a short little video that can sit at the top of your page. This is a great way to engage with your audience in a short amount of time. It only needs to be about a minute to a minute and a half long. You just want to let people know who you are as a club or as an organization, why you're crowdfunding, what you're crowdfunding for, and then how people can help you. So that's going to be making a donation or a pledge, claiming a reward maybe, could even be offering a reward. It could be sharing your project with their relevant networks. So having calls to action in that video is a really great way to help your community know exactly what they need to do to help support you. Also think about the fact that some people may be viewing this on a mobile device, and actually having that video is a great way for them to just click on that and get a really good idea of who you are and what you're doing without necessarily having to kind of scroll through a lot of text in order to understand that message. Keep it visual as well. Break up the information with great pictures, use clear, bold headers. And if you need to, as Martin did, you can put links to other resources and other websites into that page. And that means you can signpost people to more relevant information rather than overwhelming them with lots and lots of content. You want to keep it to kind of the highlights if you can, and make it engaging all the way through. Put yourself in the reader's eyes and think about how you might break up the page itself and also the content that you're putting in there. And we've got some brilliant guides on how to do that in our Knowledge Hub. So how to tell your story effectively and how to create that video. And as I mentioned before, take inspiration from other pages, see what resonates with you, see what you would like to replicate, and maybe what doesn't work for you as a potential supporter and reader, and omit that from your page that you're going to create. And now we've talked about rewards. For some of you, this is going to be quite a new concept. Really, with rewards, we are encouraging you to flip kind of the traditional raffle, if you like, on its head. You might be used to having things like a game night at the club or a raffle kind of once a year or whatever that might be for you. And you'd go out to local businesses and source raffle prizes. That comes quite naturally to you, I think, as sports clubs. Rather than just holding an in-person raffle, what you can do with all of these lovely things that you've been gifted is actually put a monetary value to them and list them as rewards. The best way to do this effectively is to make sure that whatever you're pricing the rewards at are lower than the RRP. So somebody who's claiming that reward through your page is getting a bargain. That's going to incentivize them to claim that reward. And also it's going to help engage with that wider audience, because as we mentioned earlier, you are potentially tapping into a different network, maybe the customer base of that business that's supporting you. So we see lots of weird and wonderful rewards come through our platform, and there's a selection of those on the slide now. Everything from bunny boarding at a bunny hotel, I never even knew those things were a thing, all the way through to wine tasting, a match day experience. Shirt sponsorship and club sponsorship is always something that's really popular. If you do that anyway throughout the course of the year, then funnel all of that onto the crowdfunding campaign and maybe offer it out at slightly cheaper than you normally would do in order to incentivize those sponsors to actually claim it through the crowdfunding campaign as opposed to when they normally would do. We've got a metal detecting experience here, and even things like MOT vouchers. Everybody needs to MOT their car at some point during the year. If a local garage is going to generously give you an MOT voucher for free, then you can price that at a really affordable price. That's going to help somebody in your community, and it's going to help to bring in that money towards your campaign. And they're going to shout about the fact they've had this brilliant voucher that they needed and wanted, and they've managed to do something brilliant with their money by supporting you. So think about what you can offer as a club, the conversations you can have with your business community. Think about experiences as well, unique experiences, things that you don't normally do in the day-to-day club running. So maybe a community day when you're inviting people down to the club to experience your sport. Think about connecting with different community organizations. You could have a really lovely, almost summer fair, if you like, where people can come along, take part in different things happening on the day, and all of which is ticketed, and they would get that ticket via your crowdfunding campaign. So think creatively, take inspiration, try and have it be something which is an appeal to your wider community and not just your existing membership. That's going to be the key to really incentivize those donations from the wider community around you. Okay, the other thing that you can do, which is a great way to bring in those members of a community, is to ask to be a multiplier project. So the reason it's called a multiplier is essentially we are encouraging you to multiply your fundraising activity or multiply your crowdfunding effort. What this does is it unlocks a button on your project page, which allows people to fundraise on behalf of your overall project. This can work really well if you have links with, let's say, local organisations or local schools. You can see here that Chinley and Bucksworth Community Centre, they actually had the local primary school run a non-uniform day, for them. And that was one little fundraiser attached to theirs. They had a brownie bake sale somebody ran. They also had people running half marathons to raise money for the overall project. This is great because it means anybody can take on a fundraising challenge. They can create their own small little fundraising project pages, which are automatically linked to your overall project. All of their supporter numbers and all of the money they raise is automatically funneled onto your main page. So again, it's a great way to encourage that collaboration. It enables those around you that might not be able to financially support you to be able to do something which is really important, which is to tap into their networks and to feel like they're part of this journey with you. And they're going to take pride in the fact that they've been able to help you achieve your goal. You might even have capacity to set a fundraising challenge. You might want to run a certain amount of laps of your track, or it could be that you're going to have a 24-hour Zumba-a-thon. Whatever it is, you can think about that as part of your fundraising strategy and your crowdfunding strategy. And it's a great way to bring everybody in to something that's fun and exciting and engaging. And you could set it as a particular challenge or on a certain day. What we often see, which is great, is things like the youth team versus the veterans, for example, and actually make a match day, and people can sponsor a team or sponsor an individual, even incentivize it with a trophy, or, you know, whoever raises the most will get a free meal in the club bar, whatever it looks like for you as an organization. Again, think creatively, think about how to bring others into this process with you. Is going to make it exciting and engaging throughout the process. As Andrew mentioned, there is a lot of support available, not only from Sport England, but from ourselves at Crowdfunder as well. We want to see you succeed with this. So we have webinars such as this that run regularly. We also have weekly drop-in sessions where you can come along into a virtual room. You can speak with one of our members of the crowdfunding team and also meet other project owners who are also in the same boat as you. They might have questions you've not thought of. They might be further along with their journeys than you, and you can glean some information and tips and advice from them. So it's a really lovely way to have some peer-to-peer support and have any of those questions answered. The other thing that we have is some brilliant online learning and guides. We have some great resources to teach you how to do this successfully, and I will share all of those with you. The Knowledge Hub, as I've mentioned, and I've shared the link to that, has some brilliant guides on every single stage of setting up and running a crowdfunding campaign. Use that when thinking about how to create the story on your page, create that video, set those rewards, engage with your crowd. There's some really, really useful information in there. Now, as a sports club or organisation, you'll be prompted to select sports when entering our website. That will make sure that we not only give you access to that template, but we signpost you with tailored email advice into the right areas of our website. So you're really making the most of that experience. We have a brilliant customer support team who are on hand to help you with any of the technical issues or with that verifying of the wallet that Martin mentioned. In terms of the customer support team, it is a relatively small team. They are incredibly knowledgeable and they have created the whole of the help centre. So that's full of FAQs, troubleshooting guides. If you can't find the answer there, I always recommend look there first. If you can't find the answer to your question there, come along to a drop-in, or of course contact customer support if it's more of a technical question. And then we have that live project dashboard that I mentioned, where you can manage every single aspect of your campaign through that dashboard. So do make friends with that essentially, and manage and monitor your project that way. Just really quickly sharing the links into that resource tab for how to book onto those drop-ins. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well, which I've now shared, is we've got a lovely article, recent article about the different ways that you can actually use Crowdfunder to raise money for your project and for your cause. So take a look at that. We talk about extra funding, we talk about running prize draws, all the different things that you could do as a club to integrate into your future fundraising strategy are in there. Have a read. If it kicks up any questions, then do come along and speak to one of us and we can talk you through what that might look like for you as a club. Okay, that's the body of the slides and the content for today. If Martin and Andrew would like to join me back on the screen, we can go through some of the questions that we've had coming through. I've seen some in the chat box, so let's dive straight in. We might overrun by a couple of minutes, but I think it's key to get through some of these questions. Okay, this one is for you, Andrew, in regards to the movement fund. Is it oh, sorry, you've already answered here. Would you mind reiterating the answer to Jan, who'd asked about being in the New Forest? So is in terms of location for the movement fund?
Yeah, I think Jan's question was probably a bit more general about what is available in extra funding more widely, Zoe, but and I defer to you on that one. But certainly the movement fund is a nationwide opportunity for England, because it's a Sport England funded programme. So yeah, you can either apply for that directly through our website by the sort of first of the two options we described earlier in the webinar, and that's absolutely fine. Or if your campaign is already live or you're a bit further down the road with that, you can access that through the extra funder functionality on the Crowdfunder site. So absolutely no problem accessing the movement fund money from any location in England. It's a nationwide programme.
Brilliant, thank you. In regards to crowdfunding, the only real thing that you need is to have a recognised UK bank account. That is one of the things that you would need in order to set up a crowdfunding campaign with ourselves. So as long as you have that, which you would need to if you were a club based in England or in the UK, then that would be absolutely fine for running a crowdfunding campaign. We've had a question in from Mick. If a club already has a current funding page with another provider, so I'm guessing you mean, you know, another digital fundraising platform, can this be transferred to crowdfunding? So from a crowdfunder perspective, you can, if you wish to, you could set up a crowdfunding page and you could always kind of bring money across if you wanted to, draw it down and put it on there. I would suggest though that the best thing to do would probably to close that fundraising page potentially and kind of kickstart a crowdfunding campaign, just to make sure you're not confusing the message with your existing supporters. You could maybe put an update out there and say, this is what we're going to be doing. In regards to any match funding, Andrew, I know we've had things in the past with our funds with Sport England where like retrospective fundraising wouldn't be match funded, for example. It would just be money that was raised on that current campaign. Would that still be correct for the movement fund?
We're still so early in the movement fund, Zoe. I think the honest answer is we haven't got a live example that we've worked through on this. But I think we would want to give credit to an organisation that has already raised funding towards a project and bear that in mind when thinking about the value for money of the request. And whilst we've obviously chosen to work with Crowdfunder as our preferred crowdfunding partner, and that makes a lot of sense to us, and we think there's real power and value in that, and we'd encourage people to certainly consider that option first. And I don't think we would require someone to switch Crowdfunder platform if they absolutely were committed or almost at the end of their campaign, it was going fairly well on another platform. But certainly, yeah, if an organisation hasn't started a campaign yet or is early enough in a campaign, I would encourage them to go down the Crowdfunder route. It'll just be quicker and simpler, I think, for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think something to bear in mind as well, because I know lots of people may well have different digital fundraising efforts going on, is just weigh it up for your club. Have a look at those benefits, have a look at the things that we offer in terms of those kind of additional resources and see what works best for you as an organisation. I think Martin touched upon, you know, some of those other benefits as well. So just really do your research and just know that we are here to support you if you do decide to kind of move things over. We can work with you on that as well. Okay, we've got another question come through from Katie. Can you add a historic event and the funding raised to your crowdfunder. E.g., we don't yet have a crowdfunder, as in crowdfunding project, but we've recently completed a sponsored swim to raise money for our club. So it would be great if we could add that as one of our fundraising streams. Again, in terms of running a crowdfunding page and a crowdfunding project, there is absolutely nothing to say you couldn't do that. If that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. One thing that I would suggest that you do is, I imagine that kind of pledge, if you like, would come from your club or your organization directly, because you've already raised the money. My advice to you would be, when paying that onto your crowdfunding page, that you actually leave a comment to say where it's come from. You could also post an update to your page thanking those that had taken part in that previous sponsored swim, just to let everybody know where that money has come from, and to make everybody feel special for having taken part in it. It just showcases what you're doing outside of this new crowdfunder, and what you've done in the past. So keeping in touch with your supporters and being transparent is something that we always encourage. Just going back to Martin quickly on that one, in terms of updates, did you find that you were doing that quite regularly, that it was a good way to connect with your supporters and keep them engaged?
Absolutely. For us, we try to update, because of our short campaign lifetime of 30 days, we try to update every 5 to 6 days, or if something important happens. So obviously 25% of the crowdfunder we got the pledge through from Sports England, and that was publicized. We were then able to make the Sports England requirement of how many supporters we needed one of the targets for us and for our supporters, to kind of really push everyone. Oh, we need 100 supporters, so we're at 90, whatever we were. We need to push this share, whoever, using that as well. And then when funding was announced as well and pledged, we put that into our update. So milestones were publicized, and kind of progress was updated as well. I think we had a couple of rewards come in that hadn't been publicized up front, so we used an update as well to send that out and kind of make clear, oh, there's a new reward quite far down the list at a high value, but it is there, so find it. So it was updated. Yeah, so for us, the updates work quite well, and we use the same kind of wording on our Facebook and Twitter pages as well on the same days.
Amazing. Yeah, really good advice. And it, like you say, the functionality is there, so use it. And what we always say is, you will have different audiences. Those that are your members might not be those that follow you on socials. The ones that follow you on socials might not be the ones that have supported you via the campaign. So it's talking to every part of your audience in the most effective way. So use those updates. We've had an interesting one, Andrew, coming through. I wonder if you could answer this one in regards to the funding. In terms of the sports or activities that would be supported, are these, I'm guessing these are going to be the ones that are recognised by Sport England. So how can people kind of find out if their sport may well be supported?
Yes, generally speaking, we are only able to fund what we would regard as recognised sports. There's some little bit more flexibility around that on certain activities which perhaps are less formal, and come under more broadly the definition of physical activity. But the specific question that Lisa's put in the chat around Muay Thai, boxing, particularly given the safety requirements and elements of that sport and making sure that that's right, we would ordinarily only fund, I'm afraid, a recognised sport, and within, I guess, the organisation would both need to be a recognised sport and affiliated with that national governing body, and or their coaches, and the people that would lead the sessions would need to be affiliated with that. So I think it's probably one where the recognition process with the national governing body would have to play out before that it would be possible to apply to the Movement Fund for a Muay Thai project.
Okay, thank you. And we've got an email address and a contact number on this slide at the moment. So I'm guessing if anyone has any real specific questions regarding that eligibility, that they could contact Sport England directly and
Yep.
those conversations?
Absolutely, and we have a within the web pages for the movement fund, which hopefully are relatively easy to access. We have some more detail on which types of organisations we will and won't fund, or are and aren't able to fund, and similarly on projects. We try to be as open and permissive as we can, but there are certain rules we have to sort of follow, and there's certain principles we follow with our funding as well. But yeah, it's all there on the website.
Amazing, thank you. I've just got one last question before we move on to our next steps. Thank you for those of you that are still with us in the room. In terms of kind of supplying data in regards to the demographic of people that they may be working with as a club, what's the best kind of recommendation from Sport England in obtaining that? How would you like to see that?
I think we're very aware that certain questions can be slightly sensitive and needs to be kind of captured with care. We also are aware that the amounts of money we are investing in these projects are relatively modest, although hopefully significant and make a really big impact to the organisations we invest in. But we need to be proportionate about how much data collection that we ask people to do. So I think specifically to Seth's question in the chat, if you can evidence in a reasonable way that you have a significant number of people that are using your project or will use your project that are from target groups, be that older people or LGBTQ plus communities, that's fine. We won't expect you to know to the nth person exactly who that is at any given moment in time, because I think that's probably generally an unreasonable thing. But if you can provide us reasonable evidence that you're an open, accessible club and you are popular and welcoming and used by some of those priority groups that we're most interested in, then that's what we want to see in an application and we'll give credit for.
Amazing, thank you. I will just pull up our next step slides for those of you that are here. I just want to say thank you really to Martin and Andrew for joining us today. Some really great information for all of our attendees, and to thank everybody for joining us on their lunch break today to find out more. So thank you so much, Martin and Andrew. It's been really great having you here.
Thank you for having us.
Yep, thank you very much.
And I do encourage everybody to go and have a look at Martin's wonderful project. Find out more about the Movement Fund as well, because I think that could be a really good fit for some of you here on the call from what's been coming into the chat box. In terms of your next steps, I mentioned there looking at other projects. It's a really great place to start. Take a look at different projects that have raised money before you to see if it might be similar theme, similar area, and get some inspiration. Take a look at our extra funding offer as a whole, and of course that Movement Fund, to see if you may be eligible and which route would suit you best in terms of applying. We have a brilliant Learn platform based around crowdfunding for sports, which I will share with you and you can take a look at. Ultimately, the best thing to do is just click that Start Crowdfunding button and start inputting some of your information if you think this could be a good thing for you to do for your club. There is no commitment to go live with a project. We encourage you to do so, obviously, and we're here to support you to do that. But it's a great thing to just test the water and see if this could be a good fit for your fundraising going forward. Follow us on social media as well, find out what we're up to. If you do go live with a project with us, make sure that you are continuing to follow us and tag us, and we will share the love with you as well. Any questions, contact support, or of course, join one of those drop-ins. And we wish you all the very best of luck, and we look forward to supporting you through this journey. Take care, guys. Thank you.